Scott Holliday here, and I got to open the show by bringing you the biggest news. CZW's biggest event, Cage of Death, returns on December 21st in Atlantic City. This very Saturday, November 2nd, at Harrah's Casino in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, it is the Philadelphia debut of Superpowers of Wrestling. Yes, SPO Wrestling, roll of the dice, rolls into Philadelphia. There you will see the SPO Women's Champion, Christina Marie, along with the Gold Champion, the Feral Face, after winning that championship away from Channing Deckard. Plus, you will see WWE legend Gilbert. Also, Simon Gotch will be debuting in Superpowers of Wrestling. Johnny Kashmere will be there, the Blackout will be there, and it will be a fantastic time. So I hope to see you at Harrah's Casino. Scott Holliday here with an update to the GD Wrestling Tournament. We have the first person to move on as Brando Lee fell in a four-way to Chris White.
The one of one is the first one to win one.
So he moves on in the tournament. You're going to take on either Frontman Jan or what was the other one, Hotch or something?
Who names them that?
I don't know, but out of 1,000 wrestlers, you were the first person to move on to the second round.
I am the one of 1,000 and maybe one.
One of one. So best of luck in the rest of this tournament. It'll probably take 10 years.
I'll win it regardless.
Sounds good. Sounds good. Also good commentary. Yeah. A little bit of a different feel today on the soapbox. I like to stand on this soapbox and profess my feelings about the world of professional wrestling, and I have a big list of ideas for episodes, but some of them I don't think are long enough to be their own episode. So today I've collected some of my hottest takes. So these are my Scott takes, or my hot takes, or actually Scott takes, hot takes. Mix those together and you get Skahata takes. So these are my Skahata takes about professional wrestling. Number one, my favorite commentator is Matt Striker. Yes, now you guys know I'm a commentator, and there are tons of great commentators that I could look up to. You got JR, you got The King, you got Mike Tenay, Bobby the Brain Heenan, Gorilla Monsoon, Tony Schiavone, Michael Cole. There's so many great commentators, but my guy is Matt Striker for two reasons. One, I love the way Matt Striker calls a match. And I know that you can point out many of the flubs that Matt Striker has made. He famously yelled, "Cena is free," when Cena was fired. However, I always liked that Matt Striker never just named a move. He never just said, oh, that's a snapmare or something like that. He always said the name of the move, what it was hurting, and how it will affect the match. And that's something that I've tried to incorporate into my play-by-play style. If you hear me do play-by-play, you'll probably hear me say something if someone steps on an opponent's hand. I will say, ooh, an attack to the digits, the phalanges. That's going to affect the grip of their opponent for the rest of the match. I'm adding value and explaining why a maneuver was done because it's going to affect the way that that opponent reacts for the rest of the contest. And I always like that Matt Striker included that information. He went a little too far. There's a couple times I remember seeing kicks to the back and Matt Striker would say something like, ooh, that looks like that's right between the C4, maybe the C5 vertebrae. I don't think we need that level of specifics. But I always like that he always took the time to explain not just what a move was, but what its purpose was in a match. I said 2 reasons, right? My other reason's a bit embarrassing. A young Scott Holliday used to do this thing called E-Feds. It was basically an online wrestling role-playing game. And the character I created was an anti-hardcore teacher who would teach lessons on why technical wrestling was the best type of wrestling. And his name was Cloud Striker. Cloud because I was a big Final Fantasy VII mark, and Striker because his finishing move was the lightning lock. I came up with this character 2 years before Matt Striker showed up. And yes, young Scott Holliday looked at that and went, ah, I wrote that. That's my gimmick. I know that that's not true now, but it still fills my heart with warmth thinking about that time in my life. So because of an E-Fed and because of the storytelling, I love Matt Striker. And speaking of storytelling, the best written wrestling show is Wrestling Society X. If you don't know, Wrestling Society X was a 1-season wrestling show that aired on MTV2. It was a half-hour wrestling show that featured pretty much guaranteed at least one explosion per episode. This was a time in wrestling where there really wasn't anything filling that ECW void. So they went all out with Wrestling Society X, including things like electrocutions.
Absolutely right. Straw conducted to electricity. What is this?
And high jumps off of platforms through tables. And as ridiculous as that sounds, they did a really good job of packing story into those 22 minutes. I recommend that everyone out there who is even considering running their own wrestling company buy the Wrestling Society X DVDs and watch it with director's commentary. And you can see the love and the detail they put into this show. For example, they wanted to have a moment where someone got thrown into a big Wrestling Society X light tube sign. But to do that, they made sure that that sign was visible in previous episodes. This way it wasn't just, oh look, this sign showed up. Clearly someone's getting thrown through it. They're like, no, this is part of our set. Oh no, now part of the set has been destroyed. I don't want to give away everything that's in the commentary because I highly recommend it, but I'll tell you this one story. The people who created this show went to the MTV executives with a great plan. They wanted to explain the insane things that happen in the world of Japanese deathmatch wrestling. That would set the bar really, really high. And of course, the executives at MTV would have problems with that, ask them to tone it back, and they'd land really where they wanted to be the whole time. So they went to MTV with the most outlandish match types that they have in Japan. One of those insane things that they surely would say no to was a piranha tank death match. A match where you have to throw your opponent into a tank full of piranhas. And MTV loved the idea. They were like, oh, we're definitely in as long as you have a piranha death match. And now they had to figure out how to incorporate piranhas into professional wrestling. And they do an amazing job. They create a stable called the Cartel. They were basically hitmen. They would run in, interfere with matches, and leave you laying. And when they left you laying, they put a dead fish on your chest. And they did this to a wrestler named Chaos. And Chaos responded, "Oh, you think that I'm swimming with the fishes, but I'm still standing. You want to play around with dead fish? Why don't we get some live ones in a piranha death match?" They very eloquently wrote in a story where it made sense to have a piranha match. That is impressive. I recommend everyone go and watch Wrestling Society X just to see the insane stipulations. And speaking of stipulations, I unironically enjoy the Brawl for All. If you don't know what the Brawl for All is, first off, welcome to the world of wrestling. I'm surprised you made it this far down the Wrestling YouTube rabbit hole to get to me without knowing about the Brawl for All. Let me enlighten you. Basically, in short, Bradshaw, along with some other wrestlers, were trying to say that if wrestling was real, they would win because they are the toughest guy in the locker room. And that got around so much that head writer at the time, Vince Russo, decided, all right, put up or shut up. We are going to do a tournament of shoot fights on Monday Night Raw. And the way it worked was they basically wore gloves, but they were like fingertip, almost like the UFC gloves. And it was strikes and takedowns. You got 5 points for every time you were able to take down your opponent. But you then had to let them stand up so you could continue to brawl. You also got 5 points for the most punches landed in a round. You also got 10 points for a knockdown if you were able to take them off their feet just with punches. And you could, of course, win with a knockout. If not, it went to the judges after 3 rounds. Everyone makes fun of this for lots of very legitimate reasons. A lot of people got legitimately hurt and they were putting their bodies on the line when they really shouldn't be. But the big thing that everyone complains about here is, how are you going to do real shoot fights and then do scripted professional wrestling and have the fans understand it? Have the fans understand, no, what we're about to see is real, and now we're going to go back to our fake wrestling, which you should also believe is real. And I'll tell you, I didn't. As a wrestling fan at the time, I just took it as, oh, this is a different type of match. I didn't really separate it as shoot versus work in my mind. It was just like, okay, we're going to have your standard wrestling matches, and then we're also going to have Brawl for All matches. These are still wrestling matches in the world of the WWE, but this is going to be a style that more benefits a brawler type. This is going to be something that's not for the technical wrestlers. It's going to be for the ones that want to punch and throw hands. It's going to be a situation where a person who may win a wrestling match, a standard WWE wrestling match, would lose against the same opponent in this Brawl for All situation. I love the idea of there being match types that aren't there to raise the stakes, like, oh, now we got to lock you in a cage, or now it's no disqualification, and it's a street fight because you guys hate each other. It's not that. It's very much of, this is just a different type of wrestling. This is why I like the Pure Rules Championship over in ROH, where you have a limited number of rope breaks, and how that affects the way you go about a match. This is why I love the Heritage Cup, which has more of a World of Sports feel than your standard WWE fare. I love this idea. And granted, there are some problems, but I remember when I watched this as it was happening, loving it. I love Bart Gunn versus Bob Holly. And people say, like, oh, you had 2 people who were in a tag team fighting each other with no story. How does that make sense? Well, those are 2 people I didn't care about at all until the Brawl for All. So it didn't hurt their storyline as a tag team because they weren't being featured until then. And I love Bart Gunn versus Butterbean. One, it is the last appearance, I believe, of Gorilla Monsoon in WWE. It might be his last in WrestleMania. He might have popped up somewhere else, but I'm pretty sure it is his last time you see the Gorilla in the WWE. And two, Butterbean just knocks him out, like, real fast. It's fun. I mean, Bart Gunn gets knocked out faster than Johnny Knoxville does when he fights Butterbean inside of a department store. It's good fun. I really like the Brawl for All. I remember actually saying, when are they going to bring back the Brawl for All tournament? I like the Brawl for All tournament. I know it's not for everybody, but to me, I really enjoyed it. It was fun, and I understand why it would work on paper. And that's going to do it for my Scott takes. Do you have a Scott to take? Well, you don't, because you're not Scott. I'm Scott. But if you have a hot take, leave it in the comments down below, and maybe I'll make a whole video on why you're wrong. Or right. Who knows? I don't know what your hot takes are. But thank you so much for joining me for another edition of Plus 2 Wrestling. And if you could, scroll down, and you'll see right below the video, there's a button that says subscribe. When I said subscribe, it probably did a little animation. That's annoying, right? If you want to shut that off, just click it so that it says subscribed, and then it won't do that anymore. That's just a little tip for you. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope you have a great day.